within the leaves. I'm the voice.
Hey witches, it's Natalie, and I am back this week. Again, I am covering the Year in a Day studies, and I'm actually going to be doing another video, I hope. Depends on what time my family all starts getting home from work, but I actually finished up a little bit early today in terms of my actual visits. Still have the notes to do on those, but I wanted to try to get in a couple of videos. I was going to say as many videos as I can. A couple of videos before everybody kind of comes crashing in and life gets crazy and I don't get a chance to. This video is the continuation of the Year in a Day study with Timothy Roderick, as I've been doing every week, or nearly every week. Been trying to keep it up every week. This week I'm actually on point and on time, and we are covering days 242 through 248, I believe. Well, 248 would be tomorrow, so 247. So in my last video I covered through day 245, I believe it was. So I'm going to pick up where that left off, and I'm going to carry on until today, Friday, the 25th of July, which is day 247 in this particular study. Now, that being said, I do want to let you guys know Mr. Roderick has kind of informed those of us in the group. Let me see if I can bring this down just a little, because I feel a little awkward there. I'm always feeling awkward. Mr. Roderick has informed us in the Year in a Day group that he has a second year book coming out soon. I'm not sure when. He just mentioned it was coming out soon, and he's done a lot of revisions based on some of the discussion that's gone on in the Facebook group regarding some of the stuff that's in this first year book. And I'm very, very excited about that. I think I may have mentioned that in the last video, but I did talk with Mr. Roderick personally this week, and like not on the phone or anything, but on Facebook. I mean, that'd be awesome. But I did message him and tell him that if we do start up a second year group, I would love to have his participation, even if it's just me and one other person. I have at least 2 other people. I believe Brenda Crozier said she'll participate. I think Pippi Johnson said she would participate. And that's all we need, right? Our little triad of witches there. But anybody that wants to participate, I would love to have y'all along. If you feel you've gained something from these silly little videos that I make, then please do contribute yourself. I would really like to hear from everybody. So, that spiel being done, I do want to share a little something that I got. My birthday was Monday, and I didn't want to say anything to anybody, but I did get this really awesome gift from my husband, and I want to show you guys. He's upset because he thinks it's too small. This is one of the gifts that I got. And I knew as soon as I opened it what's supposed to go with it. Now, this is the other part of this gift. And I was afraid of that. But the lighting in this video, oh boy, that looks like 3D, like it's going to fly out at you. Woo! Does not do the colors in this amethyst any justice, but he's upset because the amethyst is too small for the stand. Or he thinks it's too small. I personally think that this is kind of a perfect size. Now, what I didn't want to tell my husband was that he's like, I know this wasn't the one you had on your wish list. The one you had on your wish list was just purple glass, and you know, the people, your little, he actually referred them, and I hope nobody gets too angry with my husband and starts sending bad juju his way, but he said, your little freaks there were all saying that they couldn't get any energy off of his because it was glass. So they said that this had good energy, and so that's why I got you this amethyst sphere. And I do love it for meditation. I think it's a fantastic focal point for meditation. Very good for your third eye. And I love it. And it does feel very good in my hand. However, what I didn't have the heart to tell my husband was that I wanted a clear glass ball, because I actually want a clear crystal quartz ball, which is what that was supposed to be. So I'm going to have to go back and take a look. It was being billed as a purple quartz, which I know is very rare. But in any case, I wanted it for scrying. I used to do a lot more scrying than I do, and I found that it was something that was very useful to me. I have been doing some candle scrying whenever I have a chance, which hopefully I'll have a little more time. We just hired a second assistant. The first assistant's still waiting on her license from the state, but once that second assistant kicks in, hopefully I'll have a lot more free time to do things I'd like to do, because I am going to start a channel under my business name, Now You're Talking, which is the name of my practice, Now You're Talking Speech Therapy. And I plan to start doing videos for that topic, things that relate to speech and language development, communication throughout the lifespan. Hoping that that will kind of get our name out there a little bit more and to inform people. I like to teach. I like to share what I know with others, or what I've learned with others. I feel almost like we are duty bound to share what we learn with others. Whether they agree with it or not, they can take it and do what they want with it, which is part of the reason why I do these videos. Alright, so getting into this week's videos. Okay, I'm obviously needing some more coffee. It's like 6:30. It is 6:55 here in Texas in the evening on Friday, and my 16 cups of coffee from this morning have now worn off. Just warning you. Okay, leaving off with last week, we were in the process of calling the quarters, requesting their presence, their assistance in our ritual process. And we had gotten through east, south, west, and we were going into north. And again, I'm going to tell you all, the invoking pentacle, and the banishing pentacle were a little bit easier, because in the north it starts at the top. So just think about, when you're looking at a map, north, south, east, west, I guess, which would be backwards to you guys because I'm facing you. But when you're doing the invoking pentagram, it starts at the top and goes down, and it's actually kind of the way I draw a pentacle anyway. I keep saying pentagram, I don't know why in the world that's coming out of my mouth today. That's the way I draw my pentacle anyway, is from the top down, is how I learned it. So it's interesting, because when you're doing the banishing, you start to the southern quarter and move up. So again, just like I did previously in my little journal here, I just kind of practiced writing it out, because it's not something that you want to probably practice just out there if you're not, using it for its purpose. Then we got into talking about the gods, and the Lord and the Lady, and honoring them in our ritual. Excuse me. Oh gosh, I hope that didn't come out on camera. And summoning them to our ritual, asking them to be a part of our ritual, because I think it's important to remember that without the Lord and Lady, we don't have a whole lot going on. If you don't worship a specific deity, or you don't recognize a specific deity, or you don't work with a specific deity, however you want to phrase that, then you can leave this completely open without any kind of names at all. I personally, because I follow a Celtic path, I personally work with Cernunnos and with the Morrigan. I also do some work with Caradwin. Depends on what I am needing in that point in my life, and a lot of times I find it's the Morrigan. But you don't have to, it's funny. Getting a little bit off topic here. Another group that I'm in on Facebook is Deviant Witchery, and it's an interesting group. It's with people who don't necessarily follow the strict traditional Wiccan tenets, particularly that you shall do no harm, or harm none, however you want to phrase it. I don't believe you should go out of your way to try to bring harm to people, but I do believe in justice, and I do believe that if somebody has done something that requires an action on your part as a witch, you should not be afraid to enact that action and do what you need to do to, I don't want to say punish the person, but to return to them the level of evil that they have brought to you. Now, again, I do believe that some element of what you do comes back to you, so you need to be very careful, and I do believe that the Lord and Lady judge what is justified. And again, I have a very strong sense of justice. And one of the things that we brought up today, they were talking about being new to the path, or a newbie witch or a new witch. And I've seen several videos on this topic lately. The Lady Grey Dancer had one. In fact, she's done a couple. She did one on her other channel, a while back on why don't witches want to share their knowledge with new witches, and that was on, I'm trying to remember the name of that channel. I really, really like it. It's like Witch Talk. No, not Witch Talk. That's another one. If I find out, I'll add an addendum. It's escaping me at the moment. I can see the little picture that she uses for it on YouTube, but just, you know, message her and ask her to let you in on her other channel. I don't think they have posted any new videos recently, but basically it was a talk show type format where she was interviewing other people who practice and kind of getting some views. But people were talking about how, you know, new witches often either A, have too many questions and they're not willing to do their own research, which for me is a personal pet peeve. My bookshelf is filling up quickly. I have a Kindle that's filled up quickly with lots of different books. I read things from all different sources, and I understand that some people may have some confusion about what's considered a good source, what's not a good source, or how do you know what's good info versus bad info, because there's a lot of bad info on the internet about everything. Well, my answer to that is you have to go with your intuition. What rings with you? What resonates with you in your practice that you feel you could incorporate into your practice? That's how you're going to know what's good for you. But the path is highly individualized, and I can't stand it when people say, oh, if you don't do this, like this, with these words, saying this, doing that you're not doing it right. Now, that being said, I do think it's important to postulate that you have a basis. You have what we in the field call a baseline measure. You start here. This is your basic tenets of your practice. And we all have basic tenets to our practice. Spell casting is one of our basic tenets. If you're not casting, I don't think you can really call yourself a witch. People may argue with me on that. Now, your definition of casting doesn't necessarily, I don't feel casting has to be in a specifically a ritual format at your altar, da-da-da-da. A lot of us have multiple altars or portable altars or what have you. It's within a sacred space, some level of energy you're sending forth to the universe with purpose and intent. That is a spell. And if you stand there and you say, this needs to happen, and you visualize that and you do that, that is casting a spell. And you can do that by standing on the street. I mean, you don't have to be, you know, at your altar, sky-clad, and all of that. So, that being said, my little rant's over, done, sorry. I do think that newbie witches tend to rely a little too much on others in terms of, you know, answer this question, tell me this spell, cast me this spell, how do I do this spell, da-da-da. You got to kind of figure that out for yourself, and that's what a Book of Shadows is for. Write it down so you don't forget it. I do feel, however, that when you are celebrating a Sabbat or an Esbat ritual has a guideline. And I find that this is a very good guideline. And I do think that deity has some place in that, because we are all creations, and we are creators. So recognizing that spark of divinity is important whether you give it a name or not. There, that was my point. Now, summoning the gods. We get a lot of really good words. I basically in my little journal here just wrote the requesting. That's what I like to call it, requesting. I don't like to call it summoning, because to me summoning indicates that you have some level of power over that, and I don't think that we have power over the Lord and Lady necessarily. I think that we can request their presence and we thank them for their presence. I don't believe that when it comes to deity we summon and banish. My personal thoughts there. You're welcome to disagree. Just don't do it in the comments. Just kidding. Just kidding, actually. I don't mind when people disagree with me. I don't mind if people ring me a new asshole or not. And I hope nobody gets offended by that word, but it's true. I think that passionate discussion is necessary for growth. And I may never agree with you, and I might think you're a jerk, but I learned something from your comment one way or the other, whether I incorporate that or not. So, that being said, then we go into the cakes and wine ceremony. And for me, this has never been a really, how how should I say it, pivotal part of my ritual practice, because usually when I practice, I'm solitary, so I'm by myself. I'm not sharing and my cakes and wine with anybody. I'm not really engaging in conversation. The cakes and wine is supposed to be a time of kind of thanksgiving for what you do. So I keep that portion kind of private and small. I usually have something small. You know, I don't make a whole cake or a big scone or anything like that. But I do feel that this is an important part of ritual, because I do think that being thankful for what you've been given, the experiences, whether good or bad, is important. And this is a time to recognize that. This is a time to offer up some sort of something of your own hand to the deity in thanks for what they bring to us and through us. The next day that we talked about, it was basically thinking about, it was a contemplative day, and we wanted to think about balance. And it was weird, because when I was thinking on this, the answer that I got for this was basically the same answer I've gotten in a lot of the contemplative days that we've had over this past not quite a year now. And the answer for me was from within. We were asked to consider, where does balance come from? And I think balance must come from within, just as I think magic comes from within. That was one of our other contemplative days that I remember, as we were supposed to contemplate the nature of magic and the source of magic and where does it come from. And I think it comes from within, whether it be through the spark of divinity that we've been given by the Lord and Lady, or it comes from within your heart, or whatever you want to say. Balance and magic come from within you. Your power comes from within you, through the Lord and Lady. Again, my personal opinion. That's what came to me in my meditation, is that because of that spark of divinity that we have, our ability to conceive of something in our mind and make it something physical in our hand. This computer that I am talking to you through, this book that I'm holding in my hand, this idea, and all of these ideas and all of these exercises and all of these opinions had to start in Mr. Roderick's head, and from there move outward into a physical form that could be shared and absorbed by others. That's almost a scary thought, isn't it? And start it in your head. There are other things that go on in my head. It could be very scary if some of those things manifested themselves in the physical. But it's a fact. What manifests out in the physical has to start in the spiritual and in your emotional, mental, spiritual state of mind. It happens here, and out through here. And I do believe that that is very, very important. So my answer to that question was, balance comes from within. You have to create your own balance. The tendency of the universe is towards chaos. We know this. So while engaging in some chaos can be great, you have to know when to balance that with balance. That sounds kind of goofy. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody but me on the planet at this point, but hopefully it does. You have to know when it is time to recenter yourself and to gain that balance, but it has to come from within, like any other motivational factor. One of the things that I want to share on a personal level is that I have an older daughter, and I love her dearly. She's almost 24. She'll be 24 in just a couple of days, actually. And yes, I had her 9 days after my 17th birthday, for all you people out there going, because people do it all the time. And I'm not ashamed of that. I was young, and I made some poor choices in people that I associated with and decisions that I made, but I have never once regretted keeping that child. She's been my motivation. I was burnt out on honors classes and international baccalaureate and a bunch of bullshit in school that really didn't get me much, and I was ready to quit school and just do I don't know what for the rest of my life. And she remotivated me and encouraged me because I had to care for her, and I knew I wouldn't be able to care for her like I felt she deserved if I didn't finish my high school diploma, if I didn't go to college and get a degree, and then find out in my last semester in undergraduate that in order to do what I wanted to do, I had to have a master's degree. And from there, just the PhD just sort of seemed to... I wanted an end to it. When I heard the term terminal degree, I knew there was a light at the end of the tunnel and I had to reach it. And that meant finishing a PhD. But, I totally forgot where I was going with that thought. How sad is that? Motivation, motivational factors. As much as I love her, she is not motivated to do much with herself. We have to tell her and remind her daily and keep on her to pick up after herself, to do the chores that she does around the house, because in lieu of paying us a lot of rent, she does pay us some rent. And no, I don't have a problem taking rent money from my kid, because she's almost 24 years old and she's living at home. Now, if she wants to live here or anywhere else, she'd be on her own, she'd be paying rent, so she's paying rent. So before anybody goes all hyper over the fact I charge my kid rent, hell yes, I charge my kid rent, okay? But regardless, she's not motivated. And I've told her 156 million thousand times. I've told her once, motivation's got to come from within. I can't bitch her into doing what she needs to do. I can bitch at her because I'm upset at the situation, but it's not going to motivate her to do what she's supposed to do. She has to motivate herself. If she wants to go back to college and give it another try because she failed out twice, then, and not because she doesn't have the brains. Oh my God, the girl has an eidetic memory. She will read books. I kid you not. Well, I don't want to stand up, but I have a book that's this thick. Okay, it's the Essential Catholic Survival Guide. And it's got all the doctrine and arguments and what other religions believe and how to argue it from a Catholic perspective and all that. Got this book. It's this thick. It's over 1,000 pages. She'd read that book in less than 2 hours. I didn't believe she'd read it. You couldn't possibly read that book that quickly. Let me see this book. So I pick it up and I thumb through it. What's it say on page such and such about this? And she spat it right back out at me. I kid you not. But she's not motivated. The same thing with balance. She's imbalanced. She's unmotivated. She's imbalanced. Balance has to come from within, just like your motivation. That was my soapbox on that one. Then we get into our devotional day, and that for me was very easy because the devotional day was devoted to Cernunnos, who happens to be the deity that I recognize as the Lord. It was very easy to sit and converse with him because I feel I do it on a pretty regular basis, not as regular as I would like, but to actually sit down and to say his name and to intone his name and to feel his presence, it was different for me this time around, and I liked it, and I will probably return to this exercise over and over again. I do not have a statue for my altar of Cernunnos, nor do I have one of either the Morgan or of Caradwin. Not that I wouldn't like to have them, but in case you guys haven't priced those suckers lately, they can get pretty expensive pretty quick, especially for the nicer ones. However, for Christmas, my husband and children gave me 2 metal stags that have like snowflakes in the antlers, and I really like those. And so I will use those as my representation of the horned god. And I really do feel connected to that. And I like that because I can put those on my mantelpiece. And since everybody in the world knows that I am a Christmas freak or a Yule freak, however you want to phrase it, it is my favorite time of the year. I love the whole spirit of the season, regardless of what path you follow. It is a time for a rebirth of hope, hope within the darkness. I don't think the meaning of the day is very different for pagans and Christians, frankly. Obviously, if you're Jewish, you don't recognize it. But the whole idea of the season that you're going to be thankful and share with others and bring joy to others and that kind of thing really gets to me. So people are not at all surprised that I still have those sitting out on my mantle in the middle of July. So that's handy. Now, the next day, which was today, was kind of a tough day for me again because it's a day of silence and review. And again, when you talk for a living, it's kind of hard to keep your silence when you're a speech pathologist. However, I did take some time to kind of focus on the questions. Today, Mr. Roderick wanted us to focus on our sense of smell. Now, I don't know if many of you know this, and I'd have to go back and double check my embryology, which I don't happen to have that. I used to have it right next to my desk here, but when we got the offices, my husband made me move most of my books out and to the offices, and so now my shelves are filling up with my new books and my personal work and that kind of thing. But I do believe that it's at 6 weeks gestation. So just as you're even figuring out you're pregnant, that child can smell. You do develop your sense of smell in the womb. And smell is extremely important. In fact, for those of you, I'm sure most of you know this, but there may be a few of you who are unaware of this fact. You cannot taste food without your sense of smell. Your olfactory nerve and your taste buds are connected in the same center of the brain, which processes that information in the sensory element. It's kind of over here. Actually, it's kind of over here. I apologize. Getting my left brain, right brain mixed up. But your sensory integration center is kind of in the parietal lobe over here. And when people have surgery and they lose some part of their trachea, they have to have a tracheostomy or tracheotomy, or have cancer. Usually that's what takes it out. They usually have to take part of that olfactory system out, and they cannot taste food anymore. When I went to the tracheotomy convention for my class, that was my tracheotomy class, was actually, we went to the convention, met a bunch of people. I came back with all kinds of CDs entitled Olfaction Regained, Learning to Smell Again, because they can't do it and they can't taste food. So it's extremely important. And Mr. Roderick had a few questions that he wanted us to contemplate over today. And so the first thing was focusing our attention on smell. He wanted to know how difficult that was for us. And, you know, sometimes it's very difficult for me. I live in Texas. I live in North Texas, and as you can probably hear, I'm pretty congested. I do not have a good sense of smell to start with because I've had allergies and sinus problems my entire life. And my husband has the smell of a cat. He walks in the house and he's like, somebody spilled this, or, oh, you know, the dog had an accident in the house somewhere. And I'll be like, what are you talking about? There's no, and people, guests will come to the house, they'll be like, I don't smell anything, and he can smell it, and if he smells it, it's there somewhere, whether it's upstairs or whatever, he'll find it. And it's amazing, and I'm a little envious of that, but I think that it can also be overwhelming. There are times when having a good sense of smell is not so pleasant. And you know, when you're sitting next to a hot dumpster in the middle of 112-degree heat in Texas, whew, doggy, that is a time when you do not appreciate your sense of smell at all. And I will tell you that because I do home health. I go into some homes that you wish to the gods you could not smell. I have one home that I go to that, Lord, I can't even describe the smell to you. And when I leave, I smell like that. So I literally will change my shirt and shower if I can. Our office has a shower, and if no one else is in the office, I'll go and use it. It's that bad. So there are times when having that strong sense of smell is very unpleasant or very hard. And that brought us into, are you a person who's strongly affected by environmental smells? And that was also an interesting question for me to answer, because I do think that I react strongly to smells. Again, your sense of smell is your most primal sense. It's the first sense you get. You have it before sight, you have it before hearing, you have it before taste, obviously, because you need it in order to taste, and touch. So I do feel that I react strongly emotionally and mentally. However, because of my field and because I have to maintain a professional composure when I go into some of these homes, I have trained myself to not physically respond. And boy, does that irritate my husband. He tries those covered wagons. Just don't work on me. I don't give you the response you're looking for. I might be going inside, but honey, outside I'm going, oh, ain't that sweet. You know, comes in handy, ladies. Train yourself, I'm telling you. Um, but I feel I have a very strong connection, and a good smell can make me very happy or make me sad, depending on the memory connected with it. And an unpleasant smell can make me angry or irritated, just like that. It can make me physically sick. So I think we've all smelled smells that made us physically sick. So I do feel that I react strongly. And the last question he wanted us to contemplate, which will be what I finish up this video with, is in what way does my sense of smell impact my thoughts, emotions, or my spirit? Well, I've just covered a little bit of it. If you get a really good smell, it can bring very comforting feelings. It can bring very happy feelings. It can bring very sad feelings. It's almost like when you hear that song on the radio and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I remember that. It can be the same way with a smell, and I think stronger so. That's why aromatherapy is a multi-million-dollar industry, because your sense of smell is tied to a lot of various things and a lot of memories. And again, because it is your most primal, basic sense, most of your earliest memories, because believe it or not, your brain does retain what you heard and learned in the womb. It just puts it where you can't access it. It is there. That information is there. And it's weird because when you're talking about attachment theory, in infants and in small children, it is a proven fact that your attachment patterns are tied to how stable and good your relationships are in adulthood. So if you have a very strong reaction to some smell and you're not even sure why, it is probably tied to something that happened in your infancy, and that is no joke. So it can deeply and profoundly affect someone spiritually. It can uplift a spirit. It can drag a spirit down. It can give you a sense of a worth and a sense of accomplishment. It's strange what it's tied to. One of the things that I will share is that I sometimes smell smells that aren't physically there. And what I mean by that is I'll be driving down the road and all of a sudden I will smell carnations. And carnations were my father's mother's favorite flower, my paternal grandmother's favorite flower, and I loved that woman. And I've been told since the time I was youth up that I look like her. I personally don't see the resemblance, but everybody tells me I'm her spitting image. And she was a pretty feisty, wild lady. She liked her men, and she had no problem with letting you know that. She was a French woman. Her father came from France. Her mother died when she was young, so I don't know much about her mother, and she did not know much about her mother. But I do know her father was from France, and she was raised in a very continental style, and she had no problem with that. She was pretty wild and outgoing, and I absolutely adored her. And she died shortly after I got married. It was devastating to me, and there's not a day that passes that I do not think about that woman. I've been married almost 21 years. She died just a few months after I got married. She had Alzheimer's, so it was a slow decline, and it was very hard to watch. So every time I smell carnations, I think of her. And so I'll be driving down the road, I'll smell them, and I know that she's near me. Some essence of her spirit is with me at that moment, and I will smell roses. And this one used to freak my family and friends out when I was a kid, but when someone I know or someone that's close to me is going to be sick or injured or in the hospital, I will smell that old antiseptic-y hospital smell. And when I smell that smell, I get on the phone and I start calling everybody I know, and it never fails. So your sense of smell, I think, is the sense that is most strongly tied to your spirituality. And that is my take on that question. I would love to see anybody else's feedback. Hear any comments, please do. I love it when people comment on my videos. I'd love to get some real deep discussion going on these things. If you disagree with me, please tell me. I would love to know your perspective. May not agree with it, you may not convince me, I may not have convinced you, but let's have some discussion and let's really grow together. So I look forward to this next week, and our year is quickly finishing up, guys. I'm so shocked how far along we already are, and how we only really have a couple of months left. And so, with that, please keep up your studies. Always be thankful, and bright blessings. Thanks.